Théoden, son of Thengel, was the 17th king of Rohan, the last king of the second line of the royal house of Eorl. He was the only son of King Thengel and Morwen of Lossarnach, but he had a sister called Théodwyn. They were both born in Gondor and spent a lot of their youth in the mountain vales north of Belfalas, where their mother has come from, until Fengel, their grandfather, died and Thengel was called back to become a king of Rohan. In Gondor they have learned to speak Westron, which Théoden spoke more than Rohirric, but due to his father's influence, he was also an able speaker of Sindarin. He married Elfhild and lived in Edoras, getting ready to take over the rule of the horse-riding people after his father, which he in due time did. His sister, Théodwyn, whom Théoden loved a lot, lived with him in the Rohirrim capital, and after both she and her husband died, Théoden adopted their children, Éomer and Éowyn, as his own. He raised them together with his own son Theodred and daughter Idis, who is seldom mentioned because she was very quiet, seldom spoke, and became completely overshadowed by Éowyn. Elfhild died at Theodred's childbirth, which hit Théoden so hard that he never married again. Otherwise, he spent his time competently ruling his kingdom, in constant wars and raids against the Dunlendings, and maintaining relations with Gondor. By the time of the War of the Ring, he had been the Rohirrim ruler for 39 years, slowly becoming old and tired. His main advisor at that time, Grima, whom others called Wormtongue, was misleading his decisions more and more, and may have even been trying to poison him. As a secret agent of Saruman the White, Grima's goal was to keep Théoden as inactive as possible for as long as possible, enabling his new dangerous neighbor conquer the land. While Théoden's rule was slipping out of his hands, with Grima's influence increasing, Rohan became troubled by orcs from Isengard, who added a new element to the constant Dunlending threat to Westfold. Théoden's son, Theodred, as a second Marshal of the Mark, was responsible for the western borders. He defended the forts of Isen against the forces of Saruman, but was killed by Uruk-hai and Orcmen in the first battle of the forts of Isen. The death of his only son and heir was the last straw for the old king, who has fallen into depression. Now Éomer became the heir to the throne, but because Grima hated the man, he managed to drive a wedge between the king and his nephew, even getting an order for Éomer's arrest. This led to Éomer leaving Edoras with only the men of his own household. When Gandalf arrived and took Shadowfax, the king's favorite horse, it was not hard for Grima to turn the king against this person too. But Gandalf soon returned, this time clad in white, with Aragorn, Legolas and Gimli at his side. Théoden did not welcome them warmly, and rebuked Gandalf's advice to ride against Saruman, but the now white-clad wizard was able to cure the king from the curse of Grima, returning the old king a lot of his old strength. Then Hama, the door warden, was ordered to bring the king his sword, and Éomer was officially cleared of charges and returned to king's favor. The men of Théoden's household were mustered, and under Gandalf's advice, the king at the head of his troops advanced to face the invasion by Saruman's army of the White Hand. However, the meeting of Carol on the road and the news he was bringing changed the plan, as the strength of Isengard was too much for the forces Théoden was leading. Moreover, when the second battle of the forts of Isen was lost, and the army of Westfold routed, its men dispersed. Théoden led his men to the fortress of Hornburg instead, where they were attacked by overwhelming force soon after. The men of Rohan managed to defend the Helm's Deep till the relief force of Erkenbrand and the Hurons sent by Ents arrived, capturing the attackers between the hammer and the anvil. thus destroying practically all of the orcs and most of the Dunlanding tribesmen who served Saruman. After this, Théoden became known as Théoden Ednu, the Renewed, because he was able to throw off the yoke of Saruman. Following the battle, Théoden, with Gandalf, Aragorn, and others at his side, travelled to Isengard to face Saruman himself, meeting two hobbits, Meriadoc Brandybuck and Peregrine Took first at the gate. After overcoming the last power of Saruman, his voice, Théoden reminded the defeated wizard of his lies and wrongs done to Rohan. Then the king turned back and travelled home. On this way he talked with Merry a lot, expressing great interest in hobbits, Shire, and especially the hobbit lore surrounding piped wheat. Merry, being honoured and grateful to the old king, offered his sword and service to Théoden, becoming his squire. After arriving at Dunharrow by mountain paths, the king found the muster of his army in full swing. That night a rider from Gondor named Hergon arrived, bearing the red arrow, the ancient symbol of dire need and summons to fulfill the oath of Earl. Although the muster of the Rohirrim was not finished, Théoden could not wait any more and led the 6,000 Rohirrim present to Gondor's aid. After avoiding the strong force of orcs and Easterlings, with Sauron positioned to block their arrival, using the help of Vossis from Druadan Forest, his army got through the Pelennor Wall and arrived at the Battle of Pelennor Fields in front of Minas Tirith at dawn. Sounding their horns, the Rohirrim bravely charged the innumerable legions of Sauron, defeating the Southrons in great glory, Théoden killing their chieftain in single combat and hewing down his black serpent banner. Soon after, the Witch King attacked his company. The fell beast of the Nazgul spooked King's horse Snowmane, who fell and crushed Théoden underneath its body. The injured king was bound to be finished off by the Lord of the Ring Wraiths. But quickly Éowyn and Merry, both of whom had ridden into the battle in secret against direct orders, came to his defense. Théoden's wounds proved fatal nevertheless, and he died on the Pelennor Fields. His body was taken to the Hallows in Minas Tirith, until new Rohirrim King Éomer returned with a cortege. Afterwards was Théoden buried in the Barrow Field outside Edoras, his being the last mound in the second line. The Rohirrim minstrel Gleowain composed a song about him. Out of doubt, out of dark, to the day's rising, he rode, singing in the sun, sword unsheathening. Hope he rekindled, and in hope he ended. Over death, over dread, over doom lifted, out of loss, out of life, unto long glory.